Good evening. I am Rich Baritone, and what we are going to do tonight to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the passing of Joseph Sneed, Tyree's dad, we are going to watch two of the most gruesome driver's ed films you've ever seen. I promise you on that. So you have been warned. Here it goes. Good evening. I'm Rich Baritone. It was 10 years ago today that Joseph Tyree Sneed IV, the father of notorious psychopath Tyree Sneed, died with his boots on and his pants down in a traffic accident near Navasota, Texas, while being blown by a 46-year-old waitress he was not married to at the time. A shameful death for a real sack of shit. We are not here to remember Joe Sneed, however. We are here to remind his evil son that his father is dead and the manner in which he died. And to do this, we are going to watch two of the most ultra-violent driver's ed scare movies ever produced. I cannot overstate for you the human carnage you are about to see. Out of abundant respect for the families of the victims, dead 61 to 63 years though they may be, no jokes or any other attempts at humor will be inserted into or spoken over these films. Both of tonight's movies were produced for the Ohio State Highway Patrol, the first in 1959, the second in 1961. While the times and the cars are different, death remains the same. As such, let these films remind all of us as to what is really at stake each and every time we get behind the wheel. And now, from 1959, Signal 30. Viewer discretion is absolutely necessary.
State Highway Patrol, Corporal Kerr speaking. There has been an accident at Trimble Road in the expressway. A car and truck are involved. You say 2 persons have been killed, and there are several others injured. Have you called an ambulance? Your name? Telephone number? Thank you. We'll be right out. 764, post 70 to 764. Go ahead.
764 to 70.
Report of a double signal 30 at Trimble Road on the expressway. An ambulance has been called. I'll advise the coroner. Go ahead.
764 to 70. Okay on the signal 30 en route. Okay on the signal 30 en route.
Signal 30, the code that has a morbid meaning to the men of the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Signal 30 is the phrase that means another violent death on the highway. Another life snatched by carelessness. Another bloody statistic in the mounting toll of traffic's cost. Put yourself and your family in these untouched, unstaged scenes. You or a loved one of yours can easily be a Signal 30. We are at the scene of a double Signal 30. 2 lives have been lost, wasted because of the senseless violation of a simple, easy-to-obey traffic regulation. A truck loaded with cattle is moving along an expressway. From a feeder road, a passenger car containing 7 people, 5 of them children, ignores a stop sign, moves onto the expressway into the path of the truck. This is the sickening result. The truck literally ran over the passenger car. 2 people are dead, the driver of the truck and a child in the car. 2 others are critically injured. The driver of the passenger car violated a stop sign where visibility in both directions was excellent. His own neglect and stupidity cost the life of his daughter and the life of a man who just happened to be in that place at that time. And here is the same area in which the twin fatality occurred. Only a few are paying attention to the red octagon, which is the universal signal for stop. Even boys on their bikes pump blissfully across the highway with no thought as to the meaning of the stop sign. What prepares a state highway patrolman for his exacting job? First, a period of rigid training. There is work in the classroom that covers law, situation, and procedure. There is physical training to sharpen the already splendid condition of the candidate. But something more must be there even before training starts. A spirit of dedication to the job that must be done. The combination of dedication, physical condition, classroom proficiency, personality, and adaptability all add up into an effective, alert officer. These men will represent the state in its respect for law. After the exhaustive and sometimes exhausting training comes assignment, and then the lessons that only experience can teach. The State Highway Patrolman has many duties that can be called routine. Among them, the spot checking of cars. This patrolman and his fellow officer are checking vehicles for safety factors: lights, horns, stoplights, and windshield wipers. Checking often finds minor troubles that are not known to the driver, causing him to be more mindful of the basic safety factors built into his car. It is, at best, a routine check, but it has its purpose in promoting a better safety record. The sign that denotes the speed limit of this particular zone is conspicuous, and so is the disregard for the sign's warning. The truck is ignored, and the result of such futile carelessness teaches a grim and grisly lesson. 2 trucks are approaching each other. One is laboring up a hill. The other is moving at least 20 miles per hour faster than the legal posted limit. A minor fender bender has occurred at the bottom of the hill. When the truck driver sees the minor crash, he hits his brakes. The fully loaded semi-trailer jackknifes into the path of the slow-moving truck. This is the raging, furious result. 2 men are dead because one of them was too smart to obey a speed limit warning. While one of the drivers burned to death in his cab, the other was blown through the floor of the cab of his truck by the force of the explosion that followed the initial impact. His body could not be removed until the fires had been extinguished and the wrecked trucks separated. You've seen the blackened body of a dead man in a horrible death, far from family and friends and even farther beyond help. And you see the beginning of a final ride as one of the drivers is carried away, a mass of charred flesh. Had the speeding truck driver observed the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit, there would have been a plus safety factor. There would have been no death. How many ifs dominate your driving habits? Meet the passenger, painfully, though not seriously injured. Now, meet the driver, bumped about considerably, but surprisingly healthy. The driver of the car lost control of the vehicle. The car skidded 165 feet off the right side of the road, hit an embankment, went 27 more feet, rolled end over end for 108 feet, knocked down a fence, rammed into a post on which several mailboxes were mounted. The crossbar is seen piercing the car as it narrowly missed the driver and the passenger on the way to the left rear door. One man injured painfully, the other scared stiff, with only a hazy recollection of what happened. This is the result of driving carelessly, with only casual attention given to the important mechanics of driving. A railroad crossing and a pickup truck are the basic ingredients here. When the freight train hit the panel truck, the gasoline in the truck exploded and turned it into a funeral pyre for an aging, hard-of-hearing farmer. In spite of warnings and education, the toll taken at rail crossings remains foolishly high, probably the most needless among many unnecessary ways in which to meet death. It was a country road, and although no flasher system was in operation, visibility was good in both directions. The engineer of the train saw the truck approaching. He sounded his whistle some 500 yards from the crossing. The elderly farmer who moved carelessly onto the tracks probably never saw, much less heard, impending death. Rail crossings, wherever they are, carry a responsibility to the driver of a car, the responsibility of extreme caution. So the sickening, stiffened, charred mass that once was a man is removed. Every accident has at its base a violation of a traffic rule. Reckless operation of an automobile opens up a multitude of driving sins. Here on a state route, whether by speed or other causes, the driver loses control of his car. The vehicle rolls over, throwing the driver out and pinning him under the wreckage. Death most certainly has resulted from all appearances. 20 men are careful in lifting the car bodily because it is feared that rolling the car over might aggravate the injuries of the victim, if indeed he is alive. The 20 men hold the car up while others gently remove the body. But a guardian angel hovered close to the man. He was found to have only serious injuries, nothing fatal. He lived to tell about it. Did he boast of beating death? Well, perhaps we don't know. Maybe he lived to tell others of the folly of driving recklessly. Maybe he was spared so that he could tell others that traffic laws are effective weapons against death and injuries only when they are obeyed. There's trouble ahead, trouble that may or may not be a signal 30. What will we find? A minor mishap? Or will we look upon the stark face of death? A 17-year-old boy driving a red convertible comes over a hill crest and rams into a red hardtop that came out of a side road. Here is the young man critically injured, and this is his car. And here is the ultimate big spender in this tragedy, a visitor from a neighboring state. He has only a few hours to live as he sustains multiple injuries, any one of which would have been fatal. And this is the passenger of the dead man's car, painfully hurt because the driver of the car disregarded a common, easy-to-observe law. He had moved from a side road onto a main highway with no regard for oncoming traffic. The 3 or 4 seconds he tried to save cost him his life for his failure to yield the right of way. He is sprawled on the ground, already showing the pallor the doomed assume. Notice the care with which these torn victims are handled by the ambulance men and patrolmen. These men are using far more care in their work than the drivers of many cars show in their own driving habits. Under the green blanket is the driver of the convertible, while the driver of the hardtop lies only a few hours away from death. Another victim of the careless disregard of laws that were made not to restrict drivers, but to protect them. The man and his wife were in the area to attend her mother's funeral the next day. Thus, 14 hours before that sad ceremony, her husband met his death. The end of a trip to a funeral was simple in this case: another funeral. A young man speeds home after enjoying a rollicking stag party. He thunders down a dirt road and plunges through a dead end, through a farmer's fence, and into an area that had recently been cleared of trees. The car bounced along, sprung open the door, and threw the driver partially out of the car. With the man's body momentarily hanging outside, the car door hits a stump and forces the door against the driver's chest, crushing him between the door and the car's doorpost. Two ironies presented themselves in this case. One, $75 to $100 would have covered it easily. Second, the man and his wife were planning a party for the next day, a party observing his young son's day. Another fact that should be remembered in this careless, useless expenditure of life: the dead man knew the road well, knew it too well, because here, familiarity was the mother of carelessness. The officer who investigated the fatality had the sad task of telling the man's wife and children of the tragedy, a task that grows no easier with repetition. A high school football star speeds down a country road late at night. His love of speed cost him his life. There were no witnesses, but it seems obvious that the car went out of control, wrapped itself around a tree, instantly killing the boy. A speeding car, once it begins to go out of control, is impossible to bring back to even keel. It took several hours for the car to be pried away from the tree so that the boy's body could be recovered. The lad may have been fast on the gridiron, but speed on the highway is at best a losing and deadly game, as the lad's family sorrowfully learned. Now comes the nauseating task of removing the shattered hulk of a life that had been lived so little. The finale to the tragedy comes as the lad is placed in the rubber sack, the last offering to the great god Speed. What would your reaction be if you were one of the men lifting this boy to the stretcher? What would it do to improve your own driving habits? Death sometimes plays an overture of torture. Here again, a posted speed limit on a curve was ignored. The car went out of control and came to the send. And so the cries of the maimed are heard, cries of pain and fear. This woman wept, but cried even more the next day, for then her husband died of his injuries. Here she is being lifted to the stretcher. Now he's being lifted out of the car, laid on the stretcher, his life having but fleeting hours to run. He will be the victim of an unexpected curve, unexpected because of high speed. We're cruel, cold, and harsh, you say. You shouldn't be made to see and hear this? How could we give a better lesson on carelessness? See for yourself how sordid and sickening impending death can be. And see for yourself the weapon in this case, the steering column. Now and then, when death throws the dice, a motorist is lucky. But the odds are fixed against you. The stake is your life. A hardtop convertible wheels down a country road. An oncoming car forces the hardtop to the side where it hits a steel bridge abutment. The car flips over and rolls the length of the structure and ends like this. The car was literally shoveled to the junkyard. The driver said he was only going about 40 miles an hour. But despite that assertion, here again was the result of high speed. The belief that speed limit warnings are for other people. The driver? Oh yes, miraculously, he was unhurt. His injuries were limited to a few scratches. He crawled out of this tangled mess of metal. How could it be? A truck-trailer outfit is loaded with 40,000 pounds of steel pipe. The driver is on his way home, 2,000 miles away. There is a sharp curve. The heavy rig goes out of control and ends in a creek. The young driver is crushed to death in an instant by the shifting steel. The accident happened at about 1:30 in the morning, and it was 5:30 before the body could be removed. Much of the steel had to be removed first before wrecking equipment could be brought into operation. Adding to the tragedy was the fact that the young man was on his first trip for a new company on a brand new job, his first over-the-road experience alone. Was he sleepy? Was he going too fast for safety? What factor came in here to cause death? Well, whatever it was swift and it was final. If it was speed, the warning is clear. If it was drowsiness, it still is a lesson, because driving is a full-time job requiring 100% of the driver's faculties. The morning sun lights the last act of the tragedy. The young man is on his way home. What's the score here? Not a single or double. Here's a triple signal 30. Two congenial friends are in one car, breezing merrily down the road. Approaching them is another driver, alone in his car, using the right side of the highway. Now, the two men apparently dislike their legal portion of the road. They move to the left. This is what happened. 3 people are dead. Here, the oldest traffic law in history has been broken. Keep to the right. Now, the men who died in this one were no different than you or I, really. So imagine yourself in this position. Believe me, it could happen to you. What is the price to be paid for failure to yield right of way or violating a stop sign? Well, if caught, it could result in a fine, and just maybe you can get away with it. Well, here's a big price that was paid. 4 women met death because the driver of one of the cars failed to stop at a stop sign and failed to yield right of way. In addition to the 4 fatalities, 3 are seriously injured, 2 of them children. The cries and moans of the maimed are a grim accompaniment to tragedy.
Give me one lift with a cot, will you?
You get her, huh?
No, can't get her. Big girl.
Huh? You want that up a little farther?
You need any help back here, Paul?
I need lots of it.
Wait, no, yeah, watch the plane.
The woman whose cries you hear died a few hours later. She was the mother of the driver of the car. The car's driver was found to have had a long record as a traffic violator. Has the accident given her sleepless nights and regret? The fact remains that her callous defiance of law led to the death of 4 people. So this is the price that can be paid for violating a simple traffic law. Are you willing to pay it? Can you afford it? Think again, friend. Think again.
Okay, Paul, I'll be with you in a minute. How?
Do you, as a driver, wish to assume the responsibility of creating a hardship by destroying the life of the head of a family? Would your conscience ever rest? What is the impact on a family whose husband and father met death? Let's watch and listen.
Ma'am, if you'll recall, last fall I had the unpleasant task of informing you that your husband had been killed in an automobile accident. That is one of the many unpleasant tasks that we police officers have. Today I would like to get some sort of a message from you to pass on to the motoring public. As you know, there are many thousands killed in accidents each year. What type of work did your husband do?
He was a lineman for the High Edison Company. He worked with high voltage. He had a very dangerous job. He was careful with his job.
Was he a careful driver?
Well, he was a fast driver. He was usually reasonably careful, but he did drive fast. More so when he was alone than he did when the children and I were with him.
Did you ever have to correct his driving?
Yes, I asked him to slow down quite frequently.
And how has this accident affected your life and your family's?
Well, it means that I'll have to go to work very shortly, provide for the children's education, all their needs, whereas they would have had a father to help with that.
The letter E is an important item in highway safety. It stands for education, enforcement, and engineering. Our highways are engineered for safety and convenience. Enforcement officers are trained and alerted to help traffic flow smoothly and safely. And that leaves the third E, education. And that one involves all of us. If we educate ourselves to our dangers and our responsibilities, we can expect accident-free highways. We can obey the law. We can use courtesy and consideration. Let's all of us regard the automobile as a useful servant and priceless necessity, not as a weapon to maim and kill. How do you want to die in traffic? How do you want to kill a loved one of yours? Well, we could show you more to give you a wider selection. All of these resulted from violations of simple traffic regulations. It's up to you and your own driving habits. We don't like to take these pictures, but whether we show you or your loved ones in the ugly sprawl of death is largely up to you. You can be, if you wish, just another Signal 30.
I'm sure that you will agree with me that that movie was not as bad as I made it out to be. It was infinitely worse than I made it out to be. And the exact same thing can be said for what you are about to see here from 1961, once again produced for the Ohio State Highway Patrol. This movie is called Mechanized Death. Again, viewer discretion is absolutely vital.
These are the sounds of excruciating agony. There are no words to describe agony. There are only sounds. This is not a pretty motion picture. It is not supposed to be. It has only one purpose, to cause you to take time to think whenever you set foot in any powered vehicle. As a passenger, you can preserve your own life. As the driver, you have the obligation of protecting your own life and the lives of many others. Every mile, every hour, every minute, every second. Mark well those few words. Take time to think. We shall say them again. They are very important. But there is one word we have not said that is most important of all. That word is you. You must take time to think. It may save your own life. It can save the lives of others. You are responsible for all of your actions and reactions whenever you're driving.
Our story starts with a logical beginning, the building of the finest roads and highways that eminent engineers have ever devised. When the contractors perform their work, they're executing the plans of highly skilled specialists. But when you come into the picture, too often that word execution has a totally different meaning. Here is the story of just one car in that grouping. A family was taking a trip on a holiday weekend when suddenly two total strangers decided their destiny. One stranger was a very competent driver who pushed his truck over this stretch countless times in the past. It was foggy that morning, and he was behind time. The other stranger was death. He visited both vehicles. The first victim was the driver who had violated a basic principle, driving too fast for conditions. The other victims were the parents. No, this is not a dream, not a nightmare. This is real, and it's true. Their parents are with them no longer. The children were the sole survivors of this mechanized death.
Mechanized death never takes a holiday. When you take time to think, When you choose to live a little longer, you may also help another live his life to the full.
The minds of men work in many wondrous ways. They devise many beautiful products for pleasure, for travel, for use, and abuse. Ohio State Highway Patrolman put the story together after the tragedy. Speed was an uncontrollable mania with this driver. He had been traveling over 100 miles an hour when he lost control of his hot little red convertible. Desperately, he had jammed on the brakes, skidded 111 feet across the center strip into oncoming traffic eastbound. Banking off the south berm, he shot back 75 feet into his own lane and into the north ditch. Then, back across the other lane, he continued to skid once again for another 94 feet, where he hit a huge boulder. The rock took over the driver's seat for the last 34 feet, where the wreckage came to rest against a telephone pole. His remains were interred with the blessings of his church.
Speed alone need not spell tragedy. It's what comes with it that kills.
On expressways, you get all kinds of drivers. This boy thought he was pretty sharp. It seems, however, he had too flippant an attitude. At top speed, he had passed, he thought, another car. But he cut back into the proper lane a little too soon, clipping the car he was passing. He lost control. With his car in a rampage, he left the expressway, taking with him a huge exit sign posted along the thoroughfare. It was quite appropriate, as it turned out. It was his exit also. The engine left the car intact at the time of impact. How? No one will ever know. Mute evidence to the fact that speed can produce bizarre effects.
Death is forever. Take time to think.
Still, even if that were not enough, here's another grim example of overconfidence. The sordid details have to be recorded on film for the Highway Patrol's comprehensive report. Here are the results of speed due to familiarity of the area. In a 35-mile-an-hour zone on a 2-lane highway, a young man with his date had been driving way too fast for conditions. Sure, he knew the area real well, but not that well. He simply missed a curve. He went off the road, and the car rolled over several times. The gruesome details are now laid out for review. The girl was critically injured, but remains alive. The boy never had a chance to be remorseful about her, or himself, or the one curve he had forgotten about. There's an old popular saying, familiarity breeds contempt. Can this be applied here?
Speed is a relative matter. It's what comes with it that kills.
Many recent developments introduced by Ohio's Highway Patrol extend safety for others in their traffic control. Hovering helicopters can now pinpoint any single traffic violator, match his speed, and measure his speed up or slow down. Painted lines, each quarter of a mile with the vehicle's speed checked by stopwatch, leave small possibility for differences of opinion or variations in speedometers. There just isn't any doubt. No one can argue with the constant relationship of time and distance.
Have a white top, black bottom Cadillac, 90 miles per hour.
Air-to-ground communications pass the information instantly. to others charged with the responsibility of the greatest good for the greatest number. Tough, Buster, you had it. And all voiced communications on this matter can be monitored and tape recorded, precisely the same as were your own words, making your own excuses. This boy was in the pink, high as a kite, happy as a lark. He said it was social drinking, just a couple of beers with the boys. Later, he proved it to be otherwise by his own admission.
The sound of anyone's name is always music to his ears, except when it's called out in court, and you know you are wrong.
The next case on the docket this morning is the case of State of Ohio versus John F. Samuels. Mr. Samuels, you're charged with operating a motor vehicle while under the influence of intoxicating liquor. This offense is contrary to 4511.19 of the Ohio Revised Code. How do you plead to the charge?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Officer Martin, what is the report in this case, please?
This is my case, Your Honor. This arrest was a result of an accident that occurred on Highway 13 just south of Mansfield, approximately 2 a.m. Saturday. Mr. Samuels was driving north on 13, passed a truck over the yellow line, and struck another northbound vehicle in the rear. Mr. Samuels had a strong odor of alcohol in his breath, and after giving him coordination tests at the scene, he was then taken to patrol post where he was given an oximeter test. Color change took 19 seconds. This indicates intoxication. Mr. Samuels was then placed under arrest for driving while under the influence of alcohol.
Mr. Samuels, this is a most serious traffic offense. The laws of Ohio provide that you may be fined up to $500 and sentenced to 6 months in jail. It is the sentence of this court that you be fined $500 and that you be sentenced to 30 days in jail. I'm going to suspend $250 of the fine and 27 of the days in jail and put you on probation for 1 year. In any time during that 1 year, if you violate the rules of the probation, the sentence and the suspended fine will be put into effect immediately. I am also suspending your license for 1 year. Now, do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Bailiff, call the next case.
The history in this case is a combination of criminal irresponsibility and innocent death, if death's visitations can ever be called innocent. In broad daylight, a woman was on her way to visit friends. She'd been driving legally. But the other driver had swerved out to speed past another car making a left turn. The head-on collision killed the innocent driver instantly. The negligent one had been convicted of drunken driving before and causing another accident. For that, his license had been revoked. He had no excuse. He never will have one, for a family left motherless through no fault of her own.
Speed is a relative matter. It's what comes with it that kills. How will your relatives feel about it if you speed and kill? How will you feel? Take time to think.
Here's a fatality that need never have been. A relatively slight accident. That life might well have been saved by a safety belt. Damage to the car is mute evidence of the fact that she might have lived had she remained within it.
A mere web of fabric could have preserved the fiber of life. The means has been available for a good many years.
Go back in your mind to the fine things that men make and the transport that is vital to putting these structures into place. Occasionally, the equipment that is used for constructive purposes is put into situations of a destructive nature. A gravel truck with a worn tire was the cause of all this destruction. 5 people dead. 2 hanging on to life by the most fragile of threads. The driver of the gravel truck, hospitalized, is in deep coma most of the time. His occasional moments of semi-consciousness are filled with agonizing screams.
I can't hold it. My tire blew. I can't hold it.
All in the station wagon are dead. The driver of the other car says he saw the left front tire blow out as the truck crossed the center line before he hit head-on. No chance to get out of the way, are his comments. There just wasn't time.
There had been time to examine that tire. There had been time to change it. There had been time to think. No cost for equipment can ever equal the worth of one life.
There comes the time when the hum of the wheels, the rush of the breeze, and the countryside unrolling itself endlessly develops fatigue, slows down reaction, induces drowsiness. It was summertime. It was foggy. It was 3:45 in the morning. Time, space, and speed become one to the tired mind. The tragic effect of the tired mind has been proven yet one more time with what were once 2 over-the-road haulers. One was loaded with furniture. The other had carried electrical goods. The night, the drive, the hum of the wheels had combined to develop the tired mind, less than total alertness for the following truck driver. He saw the lead truck too late. The lead driver was not even scratched. The driver following was seriously injured. His buddy in the sleeper cab never knew what happened.
Fatigue can be fatal. Mechanized death.
Another time, another place, another set of conditions. Speed was again the first part of this terrible tragedy, coupled with whatever it was that came later to combine to kill. After the bodies were removed, a bottle wedged between the door and the frame caught the officer's eye. He thought it might be an infant's bottle. He looked for the owner. She was a baby, 5.5 months old. The officer was heartbroken. His thoughts flew to his own home and his own 3 little ones. With deep emotion, he devoutly prayed that their fate would not be this.
Take time to think. Eternal life is not now.
Take time to think. Take time to rest and refresh. One good rule of the road, known to be safe, sure, and sound for long-distance driving, is to take 10 out of 2. Particularly pertinent on turnpikes, toll roads, freeways, express routes, 10 minutes for rest and relaxation out of each 2 hours of long-distance driving. It avoids fatigue. It's living insurance. There's always the time, there's always the place, even if it's merely under a tree by the side of the road.
Take 10 out of 2. Take time to think.
You know, when some men spend their lives thinking, planning, and building good things for others, when still other people execute those plans for known traffic loads, known speeds, planned that way, all within the known variables, it must be, and it is, worthwhile and deeply satisfying. But when others abuse those facilities, change the meaning of the word execute to death and destruction, heartache and hurt, must cause good men to lose faith in their fellow beings. This story is not complete 3 months after it happened. An Ohio family elected to move from Cleveland to California. They were pulling a second car on a trailer hitch at 55 miles an hour. The tow bar broke. One chain to the following car pulled at a corner, and the car being towed caused the lead car to go out of control. The mother of the family, who was driving, lost control, and both cars and the family rolled over several times on the median strip. The people were thrown out of the moving vehicles. The son's body was found by the side of the road. He was 14. The family will miss him in their new life, whenever and wherever they are able to resume it. This is not a pretty picture. It's not supposed to be. It has only one purpose, to cause you to take time to think. And the big word is you.
Death is forever. Take time to think.
There were 6 men in this car. Some of them thought they could mix alcohol and gasoline. One of them knew better. His forethought and his remembrance helped the highway patrolman to reconstruct the story. Here it is, very simply. They had been drinking. Because one of the passengers took time to think of himself, he took command of the engine and turned off the switch. The driver, offended, invited him out of the car, an invitation the passenger was happy to accept. Because of that caution, the facts are irrefutable. Those remaining in the vehicle took off at high speed, hit a concrete bridge railing 1.5 feet thick, sliced through it, and traveled a further 4 feet to be stopped by a tree. There were 2 other survivors, one of the 5 remaining passengers and the driver. The driver is now charged with 3 counts of manslaughter, 1 for each of his former close friends. The other friend, the former passenger, will testify against him.
In the words of the National Safety Council, if you drink, don't drive. If you drive, don't drink.
You have been watching the work of the Ohio State Highway Patrol. The pictures have not been pleasant. And yet, they they have portrayed the doleful duty of these dedicated officers, men who devote their lives to helping you stay alive. You've not met these men personally. You have not learned how they feel about this mechanized death. This is that opportunity. Patrol car number 230, piloted by Patrolman J.C. Whiting. Patrolman Whiting, will you grant us a moment for one very serious question?
If I can be of help, I'm glad to.
This senseless slaughter that you dedicated gentlemen have to face all too frequently, what does it do to you? How do you feel about it?
Well, if you could ride with us for 1 week, or maybe even just 1 day, I know that you would feel much the same as I do. Here in the state of Ohio, despite what you have just seen, we have a pretty good record. We average 1 Signal 30 call, death on the highway, every 6 hours. But across the nation, the average is 1 every 14 minutes. There is no need for it. It's senseless. It's mechanized death. You cause it. We try and prevent it. The only person that can do anything about it are you, the drivers. And you as a driver have 2 obligations: to drive so that you protect your own life. When you do that, you will be protecting and safeguarding the lives of other users of the highway. Every mile, every second, every minute of every hour. There is never any need for mechanized death.
Oh, there you go. I just passed you about that. God help me, please. No, I need help now.
It's all right.
There are no words to express agony. There are only sounds, agonized sounds, remorse, regrets, pleas for another chance. So think before you act, for your family, for all others on our highways, indeed for yourself. Take time to think. There is never any need for mechanized death.